You can learn a lot about a culture by looking at who leads that culture, because culture is something that comes down from the top. People observe what happens in a culture. They observe how leaders behave, and you can see this in any culture. You know, when I worked in the Fortune 500 world at Microsoft, some of my friends gave me a kind of heads up into the culture. Some things you could do to appear to be a hard charger, even if you weren't. Get to the office early, never eat lunch alone, find out what time your boss leaves, never leave before he does, always be available on email. And that was annoying, but it was also very, very true. And when that happened to me, and I started to go to the gym really, really early in the morning so I could get to Microsoft and get work done before meetings began. I'd be in the cafeteria at 7 o'clock in the morning, you know, eating and answering email. It happened. That's where I met a bunch of senior vice presidents and big wigs, because they eventually noticed that I was sitting there and introduced themselves. And it made this impression. So you can tell a culture by how the leaders behave. And the leaders aren't always the bosses. And in Washington, D.C., leadership has different qualities. And in the Democrat Party versus the Republican Party, we're going to look at two women who I would argue are both cameragenic, both videogenic. The camera loves them. I would argue that in each of their own way, they're somewhat effective in communication. But there is a distinct difference in them. You can know people by their followers. You could know people by their antagonists. So let's start with AOC. And she is being touted, and it's not just by DNC acolytes and people who are freakishly, slavishly devoted to the letter D because it's beautiful, because it's got that straight part, then that bulbous part that's such a lovely letter. It is, in fact, people with influence. People like Joe Scarborough saying that she should be a presidential candidate for the left. AOC. Bartender become congressional candidate by virtue of a campaign of auditioning. They auditioned people to be congresswomen, and it was about being cameragenic, videogenic. So here's AOC leading her people. Remember, we can judge a culture by the leadership. You can judge someone by their followers and their antagonists. Here's AOC.
And now what DHS is trying to say, again, they're using public intimidation because they know that they cannot come for us all. They know that they cannot come for us all. And recently what they said is that DHS is allegedly looking into arresting members of Congress who were showing up for their legal and constitutional obligation to conduct oversight. If anyone's breaking the law in this situation, it's not members of Congress, it's the Department of Homeland Security. It's people like Tom Homan and Secretary Kristi Noem. You lay a finger on someone, on Representative Bonnie Watson-Coleman, on Representative, or any of the representatives that were there, you lay a finger on them, we are going to have a problem.
So let's stop and analyze. Are they being arrested for trying to provide oversight? Is that it? Are they being arrested because they showed up to look around? If they're going to be arrested? No. Now, she makes the argument that members of Congress have the right to show up at any time and look around any federal facility. Okay, let's say that's true. And let's say these DHS agents acted improperly in denying them that. The mayor of Newark doesn't have that right. He was there with them, but let's just say this is true. So if a federal agent is violating your civil rights or your rights as a member of Congress, you then get to hit them. That's what we're being told. You get to body check them and push them around and threaten them. That is not how our system works, but it's how emotions work. The Democrat Party cannot move away from emotionalism. They cannot move away from some specific emotions. They are rage and anger and resentment, which lead to sin feelings like coveting. They lead to sin feelings like unaliving people, those fantasies, those sort of demonic impulses. And it leads to mass confusion. You can know a culture by their leadership. You can know a leader by their acolytes. Now, you can say this is an unrelated clip. It's not. It's a woman at Pine Richland School District in Pennsylvania. Now, just listening to how she speaks and what she is thanking the school district for doing, you can guarantee yourself that she would be a voter of AOC if she had the chance. Definitely sympathetic to AOC. And listen to this woman trapped in confusion. And in this case, it's not even anger. It's sad levels of confusion, of need, emotionalism. This is how women like this are taken advantage of by leaders like AOC. And I warn you, this is bizarre. Thanks to Libs of TikTok for pointing this out.
I would like to recognize Miss Mansfield, especially, who is the best teacher my daughter has ever had. She lets her be as weird as she is, and she encourages it, and she enjoys it. And that is really meaningful to me and my family, because not having like a kid who's, so she calls my daughter Ellie Cat because during attendance, my daughter meows instead of saying here. And she doesn't make her feel bad about it. She just embraces it and she loves it. And that's really cool for me as a parent. And it's really cool for my daughter to feel seen in school. So I really appreciate that. And that's all I have to say.
Furries are a precursor to preferring a different body. And not every kid who goes the furry route is that. But adults who welcome kids into the furry world are often that, and often helping kids along the way into that form of confusion. It's emotionalism. It's not the worst, but it's confusion and emotionalism. And it's tied up right back up into AOC and the Democrats pushing anger, coveting, rage, resentment, emotionalism, and then coming and affirming all that and affirming the communication of confusion that comes with that. We can know this about AOC's followers. They are emotionally driven, confused people who have been pushed into sin impulses because of these emotions. So we're going to contrast that with Tulsi Gabbard in a second. We'll contrast this during a time where our country is really right now facing a massive precipice. We're on the edge of a cliff. And the cliff is this. Are we going to return to fiscal sanity or not? President Trump's trying to get us there, and your retirement hangs in the balance. If you are 5, 10, even 15 years from retirement, understand that the tariffs and the negotiations and the successful work President Trump's done with Saudi Arabia and China, that could greatly benefit you or it could crash you. And if you are not set up for risk management and you're not set up to take advantage of this, say maybe you're in a buy and hold position, I don't personally get how that works in times like this. So get to Zach's free live webinar. It is the tariff edition. He's going to look in detail what these tariffs can do to retirements, how Bulwark is always looking for ways to lower our risk, to lower our costs. It's free, but you have to register to attend. So simply go to knowyourriskradio.com. That's KNOW, knowyourriskradio.com, and you'll get to attend. Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC and SEC registered investment advisor. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 25-206. In this contrast and compare, you have a corrupt set of ideas that are being pushed under the cover of emotionalism by leaders, in this case, a woman, AOC. Let's contrast AOC with Tulsi Gabbard, obviously a woman on the Republican side of things. Tulsi Gabbard, I would argue, is just as cameragenic, as videogenic as AOC. I would argue that she's a better communicator, although she's not as bubbly. She doesn't do the kind of wacky things sometimes AOC does. That's not who Tulsi is. She always seems to be communicating on a level basis, but on an intellectual basis. She makes an argument. This is prior to her getting into office in the DNI. This is during the campaign. She makes an argument naming officials in American government that she thinks are domestic enemies to this country. Listen to how she does it and compare it to AOC.
The Capitol on January 6th to try to stop Congress from carrying out its constitutional responsibilities were behaving like domestic enemies of our country. But let's be clear. The John Brennans, Adam Schiffs, and the oligarchs in big tech who are trying to undermine our constitutionally protected rights and turn our country into a police state with KGB-style surveillance are also domestic enemies and much more powerful and therefore dangerous than the mob that stormed the Capitol. Now, John Brennan said,
so I know looking forward that the members of the Biden team who have been nominated or have been appointed are now moving in laser-like fashion to try to uncover as much as they can about what looks very similar to insurgency movements that we've seen overseas, where they germinate in different parts of a country and they gain strength, and it brings together an unholy alliance frequently of religious extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians.
Now, President Biden, I call upon you and all members of Congress from both parties to denounce these efforts by the likes of Brennan and others to take away our civil liberties that are endowed to us by our Creator and guaranteed in our Constitution. If you don't stand up to these people now, then our country will be in great peril.
Is that emotionalism? She provides examples. She, on the Republican side, in her opinion, admits that there were people on Gen 6, and there were people on Gen 6 who tried to break into buildings, albeit they were getting help from D.C. Capitol Police officers and their FBI agents undercover there, so they were getting that help. But she lays that out in a calm fashion. It's not emotional. I don't think anyone's following Tulsi Gabbard for emotional reasons or revenge reasons. And in her role as the Director of National Intelligence, she just decided to fire some people, which bosses get to do, and then to reorganize. So she fired a guy named Mark Collins as the acting chair of the National Intelligence Council and his deputy, Maria Langen-Rieckhoff. And the reason she said she did that is that these people were radically opposed to President Trump. President Trump runs the executive. Tulsi Gabbard reports to President Trump as the Director of National Intelligence. These people oppose President Trump's efforts, his policies, and his agenda. They don't belong there. Tulsi reorganized this so it's closer to her. She has more oversight. You can look at a culture and judge it by its leaders, and you can judge leaders by their followers and their antagonists. Here's John Brennan responding to someone who's a new boss, firing a couple of employees.
This whole thing just makes me livid. It's appalling and outrageous and demonstrates why Tulsi Gabbard never should have been confirmed as Director of National Intelligence. Michael Collins and Marie Langen-Rieckhoff are two of the most experienced, accomplished, and talented analysts in the entire U.S. intelligence community. With over 60 years of combined experience, they have worked for successive administrations since the 1990s. They have demonstrated time and time again their capabilities, their competence, their integrity, and they have served as role models for a generation of intelligence officers inside of CIA.
Really? Did they come forward and say, hey, stop, wait a minute, hold on a second. Donald John Trump doesn't work for Vladimir Putin? Did they come forward and say, wait a second, there is no urine tape? This is Hillary Clinton manufactured Oppo laundered through a corrupt law firm. Did they do that? Did they come forward and say, wait, no, the Hunter Biden laptop thing, that's not Russian Propo. That's real. We have it. We have the hard drives. We have images of the hard drives. Did they do that? Nope, they didn't. They can have all the experience in the world. But when they let lies like that affect an election, the outcome of an election, they absolutely should have been fired before this. Tulsi Gabbard did the right thing. 2 women, 2 videos, 1 conclusion. One side selling emotionalism and confusion. The other side making executive decisions.